I found myself starting to look around to see where I was like, well, he's obviously going to be somewhere close by. Where is he right now? Because he's not in a corner of a room watching me right now. And then he wasn't, and I was really unnerved and unmoored, and I.
Well, there was a few moments looking at each other in character. There were these kind of explosive moments when we would be standing alone, where I'd look across at her and she'd be looking at me, and even in that moment, we really were a part of their love, for real. If you have the opportunity to share a film set with Margot Robbie, you're going to make sure you're within 5 to 10 meters at all times, watching how she drinks tea, how she eats her food.
There is nothing endearing, normal, or appropriate about what's happening here. Margot Robbie is married, she has a child, and yet she is publicly engaging in romantic behavior with another man for entertainment. Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi are co-stars in a film together. They are currently on a press tour, and instead of promoting the film like professionals, it has turned into this weird public performance of romantic tension. Margot has even gone as far to say that watching scenes of them together make her legs shake and knees weak. And Jacob revealed that he had arranged for her entire hotel room to be filled with flowers to give her a special Valentine's Day. And people keep excusing it with the same line. It's just promo for the movie. It's meant to get attention. But that excuse is exactly what proves how sick the culture has gotten. If the only way you can sell a film is by flirting with infidelity, then it must mean your movie isn't good. These are two of the biggest stars in the world. They have no shortage of influence, fame, resources, or fortune. But the way they choose to generate excitement about the film is by disrespecting monogamy and marriage. Their behavior shows that we have officially reached a point culturally where nothing is sacred anymore. Not intimacy, not romance, and not even marriage. And you can trace exactly how we got here. It all started with the normalization of casual sexual acts. People love to pretend that sleeping with someone can be just for fun, as if it's not a big deal. But there is nothing more serious than sleeping with someone, especially for women. When you sleep with someone, you are sharing the most vulnerable part of yourself. You are physically exposed, emotionally open, and biologically wired to bond. That does not change just because hookup culture tells you it's just for fun. Women bond through sexual intimacy. That is reality. You cannot opt out of biology. Once you lay down with someone, attachment begins, whether you want it to or not. That is why casual sexual intimacy damages women, because it attaches you to men who have no commitment, no respect, and no intention of choosing you. Let's not forget that intercourse has the power to create life. So of course it's serious, and of course it should only be experienced between two people who are deeply committed to each other. Entertainment is what conditioned us to be desensitized. Look at what film and television have become. Almost every movie and TV show now includes explicit sexual scenes, even when it serves no purpose. And nothing is off limits. Even shows centered around high school students are heavily sexualized. So as the audience, we have become desensitized to this and no longer view sleeping together as sacred. And once sleeping together is no longer sacred, marriage is next. That's how we've reached a point where a married woman can publicly flirt and perform romance with another man. And instead of reacting with discomfort, the audience applauds. There is nothing normal about this. This behavior is cheap and tacky because it violates everyone involved. It disrespects their partners, degrades their relationships, and puts the audience in an uncomfortable position because we never consented to witnessing them profess their love for each other. Romance is not meant to be public. Romantic displays are meant to be private and shared only between two people. When romance is performed in front of others, it loses its meaning. Margot is not only crossing her husband's boundaries, but she is also crossing her own. Marriage is a commitment, not just to your partner, but more importantly to yourself. When you get married, you set a boundary that intimacy of any kind is reserved only for you and your spouse, because they're the one person who proved themselves worthy of that access. Once that boundary is crossed, there is no going back. When you take something meant to be personal and private with the man who proved himself to be the love of your life and the father of your child and give it to other men who have never proved anything to you, that's how you devalue yourself and your marriage. It's normal to enjoy flirting. That's human nature. Everyone likes feeling attractive, validated, and desired. But when a married person does this with other people, it exposes a major character flaw, a lack of discipline. Plenty of things feel good in the moment. Eating an entire cake by yourself would also feel amazing, but you wouldn't do it because the consequences aren't worth the short-lived feeling. That's discipline. Choosing not to do things simply because they feel good. Marriage and flirting are the same way. Of course, this behavior feels good to Margot and Jacob right now. They're validating each other, flattering each other, and receiving attention validation for their chemistry. But that feeling doesn't last. The consequences always come later because relationships are fragile and deeply emotional. There are certain things that once done cannot be taken back. In this case, her behavior is public, it's online, and it will exist forever. When you see how freely Margot and Jacob behave in public, it naturally raises questions about what happens in private, where there is even less restraint. Actions have consequences. When someone behaves this way and their partner feels disrespected or humiliated, real damage is done. And that damage doesn't magically disappear just because it was labeled as work. So her husband is entitled to feel however he feels because actions like this naturally come with emotional consequences. That's why this culture is disturbing, because in relationships, you hold real emotional power over someone. And when you act this way for attention and validation, you can permanently damage how another person experiences love and commitment. That's why this behavior just screams chaotic and desperate. It isn't elegant. It isn't feminine. It shows a lack of restraint, compassion, and it creates problems that didn't need to exist. The rise of couples content is another symptom of this culture. There is nothing normal about turning your marriage into a brand and monetizing it. When you actually care about something, you protect it. And in relationships, privacy is protection. The moment people started filming their relationships, exaggerating intimate moments, and posting them for attention is when marriage started losing its meaning. Relationships are meant to be lived, not performed. Once you put your relationship online, it's no longer just yours. You invite opinions, judgment, commentary, and access from people who should never be involved in your marriage in the first place. It's the same thing in real life too. Oversharing intimate details has been normalized, but it's still not okay. When you share private details about your partner with other people, you're violating them. They only consented to being vulnerable with you, not with anyone else. That's what makes relationships private and sacred. And once you expose those personal moments, you minimize their value. Here is what all this comes down to. If you want a stable love, you have to live like stability matters. That means you do not entertain attention that threatens your bond. That means you do not play games with intimacy. That means you do not make romance public. That means you do not invite third parties into your relationship, even if the third party is the internet. Because your relationship is either protected or it is exposed. And exposed relationships break. Marriage only works when it's protected, and anything that's constantly being shared, consumed, and exposed is not being protected. If a little fling of attention, a little dopamine, a little press tour thrill is enough to make you blur lines, then you do not understand what you have. And if you are the partner watching this and being told you're insecure for having boundaries, you are not insecure. You are normal. It is normal to want marriage to be respected. It is normal to want intimacy to be private. It is normal to want your partner to protect the bond instead of testing it. None of that makes you controlling or jealous. It means you take commitment seriously. What's not normal is how hard society is working to convince you that disrespect is confidence, that boundary crossing is harmless, that chaos is exciting, that if something makes you uncomfortable, the problem must be you. This is the result of a culture that devalues marriage, sells intimacy, and then acts confused when everyone is lonely, anxious, and unstable. People are encouraged to chase validation, attention, and novelty, and then they're shocked when nothing feels secure or lasting. Real relationships are not built on constant stimulation. They're built on trust, restraint, and protection. And none of those things are glamorous enough to go viral, which is why they're constantly undermined. So no, you're not crazy for wanting more. You're not dramatic for expecting boundaries. And you're not outdated for believing that marriage should actually mean something. The problem isn't that your standards are too high. The problem is that the bar has been dragged so low that basic respect now looks unreasonable. None of this is surprising. It's exactly what happens when commitment stops being taken seriously. Comment your thoughts below, and thank you so much for watching.